In Overwatch, there is one role that is the flashiest of all of them. From Genji Blades to Tracer Bombs and Echo Dupes, Flex DPS is truly a versatile role that is filled to the brim with so much talent. There are so many crazy Flex DPS players throughout the years, so making this list was the hardest one by far. After a lot of time, I think I have narrowed them all down to my top 5. Please be aware that this list is my opinion, so if you disagree, please leave a positive comment down below, as I'd really love to hear your thoughts. Before we begin, please consider leaving a like on this video and subscribing to my channel if you like Overwatch esports. It would really mean a lot to me. With that said, let's talk about the top 5 Flex DPS of all time. At number 5, I have Leave. Leave is widely considered to be one of the best Chinese Overwatch players, alongside of Guxue and Shy, and has been a dominant force for many years. He started out on the 2020 Chengdu Hunters, and this team was a bit of a mess. Leave was basically the only consistent member of this team, and they would even play a bunch of off-meta stuff, including lots of Wrecking Ball. They just generally weren't really that good. Even still, people could really see that Leave had a lot of potential, and in 2021 he really got to show that potential off. The Hunters made some great changes, and Leave got to work, putting on a dominant showing on the Echo and Tracer, and making it to 3/4 of the tournament during the year, as well as getting 2nd place in both the Summer Showdown and Countdown Cup tournaments. Leave put his team on his back, and was widely considered to be one of the best players in the world. Leave not only won a Role Star this year, but also the MVP award for 2021. He put the Chengdu Hunters on the map, and he was the main reason for the Hunters' success. Unfortunately, in 2022, the Hunters had a lot of financial issues, and they had to make a budget roster, which meant that the team was not very good. Despite these issues, Leave still looked pretty good, and even though he was forced onto hit scan for a majority of the season. However, in 2023, Leave would have another shot on a good team. He joined the Hangzhou Spark, widely considered to be a Chinese super team. The team placed top 3 in the East and had a pretty good season overall. They even had a really nice playoffs run, placing 3rd overall. Leave received yet another Role Star and looked to be back in his 2021 form. But unfortunately, since Leave is Chinese, he was unable to compete in OWCS, which means we've barely seen him play since Overwatch League went away. We saw him in the Esports World Cup on LGD, but that team was still pretty new and hadn't got the consistent practice and scrims like the other teams, so they didn't do all that well. They did manage a nice win over Team Falcons, which does give me some hope for them. Hopefully we'll be able to see the Chinese players in OWCS soon, and I really can't wait to see Leave play again. The number 4 spot on this list is the only Western player we will talk about today, that being Kevster. Kevster has been widely considered to be the best player from EU for many years. That is for a good reason. He started out his Overwatch League career on the 2020 LA Gladiators, originally being a faceless player, with his face being replaced with a Genji cartoon. His face wasn't revealed until June of 2021. Upon joining the Gladiators, Kevster immediately made an impact, and was already regarded as a very good player. The Gladiators weren't the best in 2020, but Kevster was one of the main reasons why they found success at all. In 2021, however, Kevster would level up, and would be one of the best players in the league. The team around him got better, and the Gladiators were a serious competitor in the West, being a top 3 up there with the Fuel and Rain. They finished 11-5 on the year, and received a top 4 finish in the regular season. The main highlight was the Countdown Cup, where the Gladiators ended up winning the tournament in an insane 4-3 win over the Chengdu Hunters, which Kevster won Player of the Match for. His insane Tracer play was a major difference maker in the series. This was the Gladiators and Kevster's first win, but in the following year, they would get even more. Kevster also received a Role Star, and in 2021, he placed top 6 in the playoffs. Moving into 2022, the Gladiators were looked at as a top-tier team, and Kevster was a key component of the team. Shu, Skewed, and Funny Astro was an insane backline, and the team was looking like a top 3 team in NA. In the tournament, they beat the Outlaws in round 1 3-0, and moved on to face the Fuel, who were looking like the favorites for the tournament. But the Gladiators surprised everyone by beating them 3-1, and moved on to face the Rain in Winners Finals, who they beat handily 3-0. The Fuel met them in the finals, where Gladiators surprised everyone yet again by beating them 4-0 and winning the kickoff clash. Kevster was already looking like one of the best players in the world, and he kept it going, not losing a game in the mid-season qualifiers, and they were considered to be a top 2 challenger for the actual tournament. In said tournament, the Gladiators beat the Outlaws easily, and then took down the Hangzhou Spark in a narrow map 5, before finally getting beaten in a 3-2 fashion by the Shock, getting knocked down to face the Atlanta Reign in lowers bracket, who were midway through their incredible lower bracket run. They stopped the run and managed to beat the Shock in the Grand Finals 4-2, taking their third title in a row if you include 2021. However, all good things must come to an end, and the Gladiators' reign of terror came to an end with some internal issues, as well as a very strange Jotes meta, and the team didn't even make it to the next tournament. Kevster was still insane, with him and Shu being the main reason why the team was still putting up a fight, and although they didn't finish the year well, Kevster still got another role star due to just his sheer amount of insane play. The 2023 Gladiators were definitely a step down, but Kevster still put the team on his back time and time again, but to no avail. Gladiators did not do very well this year, starting out fine but falling off heavily in the second half of the year. After Overwatch League ended, Kevster joined ENCE, which has been a consistent top 2 team in EU throughout the year so far, and Kevster is the best player on ENCE and arguably is the best player in the entire region. He's continued to be a dominant player in EU, and I really look forward to seeing what else he can do in OWCS. At the number 3 spot, I have Fleta. Fleta has been a staple in the Overwatch esports scene for years. He started out playing in Apex and was signed to the Seoul Dynasty in Season 1 of Overwatch League. However, the Dynasty were very messy in the early years, and Fleta had a difficult time carrying this roster. He was so good, in fact, that the nickname Fleta Deadlift was born, due to the sheer amount of times that Fleta would get over half of his team's kills. The Dynasty were not that great, but Fleta got his chance to swap teams in 2020, moving over to the Shanghai Dragons. On the Dragons, he immediately made an impact. He was dominant and a key player in the Dragons' insane 2020 season. The Dragons won the May Melee in a dominant fashion, as well as taking the Countdown Cup later in the year. The team went 27-2 in the regular season, placing first overall, and they were seen as the favorites to win the season. Fleta did so well, in fact, that not only did he win a Role Star, but he also won MVP, having one of the best Echo performances of all time. However, things didn't go well for the Dragons in the playoffs. Due to a very weird meta, the Seoul Dynasty and Shock both beat the Dragons in the playoffs, resulting in a 3rd place finish. In 2021, the Dragons were ready for revenge. Signing a top 3 all-time team, the 6-man roster of Fleta, Lip, Lee Jae-gon, Izayaki, Fate, and Void was truly something else. This team was consistently the number 1 team in the East, and was considered a title favorite for the entire year. This team won both the June Joust and the Summer Showdown, and barely lost at all during the regular season, placing first in the standings. The Dragons easily swept through the playoffs, beating the Atlanta Reign in the finals, winning. This is the year where Fleta peaked. His Echo, Tracer, and pretty much everything else he played was top-notch, and he truly cemented his legacy this year. However, this would be the last year of his greatness, because in 2022, things began to go downhill. As the season started, the Dragons were expected to remain on top, but there was a considerable decrease in play for most of the Dragons players, Fleta included. In fact, only Lib and sometimes Izayaki seemed to still be able to play at their 2021 level, and the team suffered as a result. They were by no means a bad team. In fact, they were top 2 in their region, but they had very high expectations and just didn't perform at the expected level. They did win one tournament, however, the Summer Showdown, but Fleta didn't play during this tournament. The tournament was during the Jotes meta, where Sojourn Genji was hard meta, and Fleta was benched in favor of Who Are You for a majority of the tournament, and he watched his team win from the bench. People were a little concerned because even when Fleta did play, he looked much less explosive and was having a lot of trouble. 2023 is where Fleta's career as a player would end. He remained on the Dragons, but he was actually signed as a tank player. Let's just say the Fletank was truly horrible, being a bottom tier tank player in the league. It really didn't help that it was a Winston meta, and Fleta just wasn't a Winston player, he's a DPS player. The Dragons were bottom tier, and Fleta had to go. He was replaced by Fate on the tank mid-season, and he would never play as a player again, becoming a full-time coach for the remainder of the season, and remaining as a coach for OWCS. Fleta has recently been coaching Fnatic, formerly known as Yeti, in Korean OWCS. This team placed 4th in Korea, but came up very short in Esports World Cup. I'm curious to see how Fnatic and Fleta do throughout the rest of the year, so I'm going to have to keep an eye out. Before I go over my top 2 choices, I'm going to start going over my honorable mentions. The Flex DPS role is filled with a ton of incredible players, so I have a lot more honorable mentions than normal. My honorable mentions are, in no particular order, Striker, Stalker, Rascal, Sparkle, Haksal, Heesang, Pelican, Decay, Checkmate, and Choice A1. Each of these players have been extremely good over the last several years. Pretty much all of them could have made this list, but I could only pick 5 people, and they just didn't make the cut. Most of them fall short of the list either due to lack of accomplishments, lack of longevity, or just not having played in the recent years against the best of the best. If you have any of these players in your top 5, please leave a positive comment down below and let me know who your top 5 are. I'd really love to hear your thoughts. My number 2 spot is going to fittingly go to Carpe number 2, Proper. Even though he hasn't been around that long, Proper has made an insane impact on the Overwatch esports scene. He was dominant contenders on O2 Blast, and he moved over to the San Francisco Shock in 2022. He made a difference immediately upon joining this team, going 6-0 in the first stage, but unfortunately the team came out short in the tournament. Despite the loss, Proper still looked incredible, getting several deadlifts and setting the deadlift record throughout the season. The Shock placed second in both of the following tournaments, losing to Gladiators and then the Fuel, much to the dismay of Proper. Moving into the playoffs, the Shock finished their season 20-4, finishing 2nd place overall. In the playoffs, the Shock got upset in their first match by the Houston Outlaws, and Proper had to lock in, deciding that he wasn't going to go out like that. The Shock, with the help of Proper, stormed through the lower bracket, eliminating the Dragons, Gladiators, Dynasty, and Spark, as well as getting the revenge on the Outlaws, moving on to the Grand Finals against the Dallas Fuel. The Shock and Fuel faced off in one of the best matches in Overwatch history, going all the way to a map 7, where the Fuel would take the Shock down, eliminating them in second 4-3. Proper would not only receive a Role Star this season and the Rookie of the Year, but he also won the MVP, having the most dominant season by a single player in Overwatch history. However, if you noticed, Proper didn't actually win anything this season, accumulating 4 second place finishes total throughout the season, and this wouldn't be the last time we'd see Proper with a silver medal. Let's just say that the 2023 Shock was a bit of a disaster. The team picked up the rest of the O2 Blast core, but the team just couldn't seem to work out. The synergy was all over the place, and the lack of veteran presence was very evident. The team made several changes throughout the year, and finished with a disappointing 8-8 record. That being said, Proper was by far the best player on this team, and he was clearly still one of the best worldwide, carrying this team time and time again. After this disaster of a year, Proper joined Team Falcons in Korean OWCS. Team Falcons is a genuine super team, and is widely considered to be a top 2 team worldwide. In Korea Stage 1, Team Falcons went 7-1, only losing to Crazy Raccoons, known at the time as WAC, and ended up winning their playoff stage and having the number 1 seed, moving into OWCS Asia Stage 1. This would be Proper's first major win since leaving Contenders, but the spirit of Carpe was not quite done with him yet. Team Falcons dominated in OWCS Asia until they faced off against Crazy Raccoon in the upper bracket finals, where they would get 3-0'd and get sent to face FTG in the lower bracket. After a narrow 3-2, Team Falcons moved back up to face Crazy Raccoon, but lost 4-1 and entered the DreamHack Dallas tournament as the 2nd seed. DreamHack Dallas was basically a 2-man race between Team Falcons and Crazy Raccoon, and neither team dropped a single map to any other teams other than each other, and Falcons actually won 3-2 in the upper bracket finals. But in Grand Finals, they just couldn't keep up, and lost 4-2, adding yet another silver medal to Proper's resume. In the Esports World Cup, Falcons were expected to be a top 2 team yet again, but a surprising loss to LGD in groups had people worried. But Falcons stomped through M80 and Virtus Pro to face off against their rivals Crazy Raccoon in the semi-finals. Due to the crappy structure of the Esports World Cup, this was actually a single elimination tournament, and Team Falcons just couldn't beat Crazy Raccoon yet again, losing 4-1 and getting eliminated in 3rd/4th place. Now recently, in OWCS Stage 2, Team Falcons have actually already lost 2 matches, one to Crazy Raccoon yet again, and also one to Zeta Division. It used to be a competition between Crazy Raccoon and Team Falcons, but the record against Crazy Raccoon being 2-7 makes this a lot less of a rivalry and more of just a one-sided beatdown. Despite these losses, Proper is still consistently and constantly dominating, looking like a top 3 DPS worldwide, and as long as the opponents around him aren't Crazy Raccoon, he is the best player in the lobby. He has continued to be an incredible powerhouse, only ever really being bested by other people that are on his team or that are on Crazy Raccoon. Proper has had a crazy career so far, and is one of the best players in the world skill-wise, but he lacks the accomplishments for me to put him at the number 1 spot. Finally, at the number 1 spot, to the surprise of probably no one, I have Prophet. Prophet may not be the GOAT anymore, that honor goes to Lip or Violet, but he is still the best flex DPS of all time at this point. Prophet was around and a top tier player for over 6 years. Starting out in Apex, Prophet immediately established himself as a crazy good player before Overwatch League even started, and in Season 1 he joined the London Spitfire, when he would constantly be one of the best in the world. The Spitfire ended up winning Overwatch Stage 1 and finished the regular season 24-16, placing 5th overall. In the playoffs, however, Prophet would level up, putting on a disgusting playoffs performance, and this is where the phrase playoffs Prophet would come from. The Spitfire, on the back of Prophet, made it to the Grand Finals, where they would beat the Philadelphia Fusion, winning the Overwatch League Season 1. Prophet would receive the Finals MVP award, and cement himself as one of the best in the early parts of Overwatch history. 2019 was not as great of a year, but that really wasn't Prophet's fault. 2019 was dominated by the GOATS comp, and as a DPS player, Prophet was forced to either play Brigitte or Zarya, and he chose to be the team's Zarya player during 2019. Despite the strange change for Prophet, Spitfire actually went 16-12 in the season and finished 7th, which was actually pretty good all things considered. In 2020, Prophet moved over to the Seoul Dynasty, joining Fitz in a great DPS line. This dynasty had a bit of a rough year, going 12-12 and placing 11th in the regular season, but a strange, weird patch for the playoffs gave the dynasty the chance to succeed, and succeed they did. In the Asia playoffs, the dynasty would upset the Charge and take the Dragons to a map 5, beating the NYXL in the lower bracket and making it to the playoffs alongside the Shock, Fusion, and Dragons. In the playoffs, they would lose a very close game to the Shock, losing 3-2, and would have faced the Fusion in their first lower bracket match. They caught the Fusion off guard and 3-0 swept them to face the Dragons in a revenge match to try to make Grand Finals. This match was absolutely wild, and Prophet put on a serious show, upsetting the Dragons, who were champion favorites, and making it to the Grand Finals against the Shock. They put up a good fight, but ultimately lost 4-2 in a very great match. Prophet still looked like a top tier player throughout the season, and that wasn't going to stop now. Moving into 2021, the Dynasty were a very scary team. They were consistently a top 3 team in the East, having a fantastic 12-4 record in the season, finishing 7th overall, and constantly fighting for a top 2 spot in the East. Prophet looked electric, and the team around him played quite well, but they just couldn't find the results they wanted. They were knocked out of 3 out of 4 of the stage tournaments by either the Chengdu Hunters or the Shanghai Dragons, always being right on the cusp of making it to those tournaments. They finally got their chance in the Countdown Cup, but they just couldn't keep up with the Atlanta Reign or the Hunters, and placed 4th. They choked in the play-ins, losing to the Fusion and just barely missing the playoffs. Still, being a top team was quite impressive, and the season was widely a success. However, 2022 would be even better. The Dynasty made some serious upgrades in 2022, acquiring Smurf, Stalker, and Vindame. Later in the season, they would also trade Creative for Iris. This team was seriously scary, and with Prophet and Fitz leading the way, the team would make it to the kickoff clash, but would be sent into the lower bracket early after a close 3-2 loss to the Shanghai Dragons. They then swept the Hangzhou Spark and had a rematch against the Dragons in the losers finals. This match went the distance, and Prophet went absolutely nuclear, taking the match into his own hands and managing to secure a 3-2 win over the Dragons, with Prophet taking his second player of the match of the tournament. They moved on to Grand Finals and carried their momentum, hitting the Fusion with a sick 4-0, with Prophet taking every single Dynasty player of the match for the tournament. The Dynasty would consider to be a pretty good team, finishing the season 19-5 with a number 1 placement in Asia and a number 4 placement overall. The Dynasty would place 2nd in the Summer Showdown and place 5th through 6th in the playoffs, and Prophet would also receive a Roll Star Award this season. Season 6 would be Prophet's final season as a pro, and it was basically his last ride of a season. He was clearly less committed and was taking it a lot more casually, and the Dynasty weren't really the greatest team. Despite Prophet basically relaxing this season, he was still the best and most consistent performer on his team, and he still looked really good. Prophet actually didn't play for a part of the Midseason Madness qualifiers, and the Dynasty really suffered as a result. The team went 6-7 total throughout the season, but they played very well towards the end of the season, actually winning in Group B in the Summer Stage Knockouts, beating the Soul Infernal 4-1. They ended the season on a high note, and Prophet announced his retirement shortly after the season ended, finishing off one of the longest and most incredible careers in Overwatch history. Prophet may not have won the most tournaments or dominated every year, but the sheer longevity and continued success of his career puts him at the top for me. Maybe someday will he get passed over, but as of right now, I think he deserves number 1. I will always have incredible memories of Prophet, and I'm thankful that we got to watch him for so long. I really hope he's enjoying his retirement. With that said, thank you so much for watching. If you like Overwatch esports, please consider subscribing. Leave a like on this video, and comment down below your top 5 flex DPS in Overwatch history. Thank you so much for watching.